So honored to have Jennifer Friend here with us today to tell us a little more about a personal perspective on the story that you saw today in Nomad Motel. I want to turn it over to her voice as quickly as possible, so I will do that. If you could just tell us a little bit about your background and where you are now with Project Hope Alliance, which is an organization of which she is the CEO.
Also, and how you came to be part of this play, how this came to be.
So that's kind of maybe one of the most fun parts. So I grew up in Huntington Beach. I have a family of 6, 3 brothers, one of whom is named Jack. And my family either lived in a middle class environment or we lived in motels and slept on the floor of friends from church or friends of my parents. And so starting in 7th grade, my dad he worked for himself. He was chasing this crazy dream where he thought one day everyone would have their own cell phone, their own personal phone, and everyone thought it really crazy, right? Because we all have them. And he didn't have personal money. He didn't grow up in a family with money, so he had to get investors to kind of pursue this dream. And the dream became something that he was so hyper-focused on that we ended up getting evicted all the time from our home because we didn't have enough money to pay the rent. So I tried to count how many different places I lived by the time I was in high school, and I got to 24. And my family, actually, it's very interesting. We always had a lot of love, even in the midst of all the chaos, but there was a lot of chaos. So I hid it. I never shared my story till I was 42. So I met Carla Ching, the playwright, pretty much at the very beginning. So I'm 48 now. So this journey has only been in the last 6 years. I would tell people that they couldn't come over because, I don't know, someone was sick at my house, or we were house sitting. We were always house sitting. No one could call because our phone was broken, all of those different things. And I felt compelled to become a part of this organization called Project Hope Alliance when I was about 41. I saw the Motel Kids of Orange County documentary on HBO.
What was it called?
The Motel Kids of Orange County. And that is actually about Project Hope at its earliest phases. So I went to a board meeting at the time. So what happens is I graduated from high school. I went on to junior college, went on to college, went on to law school, became a litigation partner at a large law firm. So that resiliency, that grit and determination carried me through all of that. All my brothers went to college on full ride scholarships. One went to University of Pennsylvania, Wharton undergrad, and we all made it to the other side, praise God. And so I saw this Motel Kids of Orange County documentary. I didn't really know what to do with it because no one knew I'd been a motel kid, including my very closest friends. And that created a lot of disconnect between me and other people because I felt so ashamed. Like if I shared with people what was going on, that they would think poorly of my parents, or they would think I was weird, to be honest. I didn't really know what to do with that. So I went to this board meeting with Project Hope, and I walked out the secretary of the board because I'm an overachiever. And I told the board, like, hey, you guys, I absolutely am committed because I know that these kids decide every day to try. The sheer fact that they're still going to school and they still have some semblance of hope inside of them means that given the right opportunities and tools, they're just going to change the world, right? Because they're all internally motivated.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but when you went to that board meeting, did you share your story with them, or was that, how long were you with them before you shared that story?
No, I shared it and I told them they couldn't tell anyone.
Got it. Okay.
So then I had an opportunity. As a trial lawyer, I was trying to think of some way to let people know what homelessness looks like in Orange County. Because, nationally, the national statistic is that there are over 1.3 million homeless children in America's public school system. Those are counted, which lets us know that the number is at least double that. And so the trial lawyer in me was like, I have to build something, some kind of an exhibit, right? So we partnered with the Claire Trevor School of the Arts at University of California, Irvine, and we built the Tropic Motel Room, which actually, what's been very fascinating, because none of the set designers had seen the art piece either in Pittsburgh or here. It looks like it, which means that they're incredibly talented set designers.
How weird, yeah.
So we built this multimedia art installation piece, and we unveiled it at the college. And I brought a reporter, and the story was supposed to be about the triangular relationship between the university having all these resources, the nonprofit needing to tell a story, and the business community being able to fund that art piece. So I show up for the interview. I'm in my Brooks Brothers suit because I'm feeling super insecure, like really vulnerable and uncomfortable. And the reporter says to me, so how the heck did you come up with this idea? Like, where did this come from? And I said, well, off the record, I lived here for 9 months with my family of 6. And he was like, that's the story. Are you okay with that? And I said, no, but I think God is, so ask me the question. So it ended up on the front page of our newspaper. I mean, like, picture, I was freaking out. I actually,
County Register?
yeah. So I was on Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland with my kids when the reporter sent me an advance copy of the article. And I'm sending him an email saying, pull it. I can't do this story. But it won't go through because I'm inside this ride. So there's no internet connection. And I'm like, it's not going through. And so then I'm like crying, and my girlfriend was with me, and she was like, what's wrong? And I'm like, the story, I can't do this. Like, no, this is a bad idea. But I never sent the email because there's no internet connection. So then I went home and I started calling all my friends. You guys don't know this about me, but this is what the deal was. I started calling my clients because I thought they wouldn't want me to be their lawyer anymore, because the lie that I told myself was that I was unworthy, I was never going to be good enough, I wasn't as smart as I thought I was, and the sham was going to be up, really. Like, you know, I fooled all these people all this time. That's not what happened at all. People were beautiful because, as we were talking about earlier, everyone has a secret, right? It's just a matter of whether or not you have the courage to be vulnerable with that secret and let people reaffirm that you are enough. So then I felt really conflicted. I kept thinking, what am I supposed to do with this? And I had one of my best friends who saw the play last night. It was very special. She preached a sermon on the book of Esther. We weren't even friends yet. And then I knew I had to quit my job. So that was almost 6 years ago. I resigned from my partnership to come in as CEO of Project Hope. We started out serving 65 kids in one school. We now serve kids that go to 91 different schools. We're on campus of 2 junior highs and 2 high schools with intensive case managers with an office from 7:30 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon, and we do life with our kids. And we let them know that they are enough. And the thing is these kids are so smart and so creative and so self-driven that all they need is to have the gaps filled in that have been caused by homelessness, and they just take it from there. So we've grown over 400%. We've grown 100% every year. So it was me and LaShawn High when I started in the multi-purpose room with desks in there, and now we have a team of 23. Yeah, but this is weird for me, just so y'all know. Not in a bad way. I don't know what box I put. I put it in the box of all things work together for good. That's the box I put it in, right? Without me having this story, Carla never would have found, you know. So.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about how that connection happened. So this play was commissioned by South, well, Carla was commissioned to write a play by South Coast Repertory.
Right.
and then from there.
Yeah, so South Coast Repertory is in Orange County, and Carla was commissioned to write a play about Orange County, and she's trying to figure out, what do I talk about in Orange County that's real? I mean, she's brilliant. She's genuinely a brilliant playwright. What do I talk about? So she started kind of just like researching things. And she'd seen the Motel Kids of Orange County documentary, and then she started researching, and she came across that article that was in the Register about my story. So she had been selected by the Kirk Douglas Theater to be a part of this playwright group, and they were invited to ask experts to come and sit and have all the playwrights ask them questions. And you have to remember, this is right at the beginning for me. I told my story in that article, but I didn't really, and there's still, honestly, there's parts of my story I'm not ever going to share because I don't know that it's everyone's business. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean, and yeah, that's right. Like, it's still personal. It's me. It's my family. I love my parents, and and neither of them are living now, which gives me. I never would have even told my story to the reporter if my father had still been living, out of respect. So anyway, so Carla came across my article and she asked me if I would come, and I said yes. And then she also came across the article about parachute kids, which happens all the time, especially in University of California, Irvine, the school I graduated from. A lot of kids whose parents have sent them from Asia over here in high school, and they live in like Pelican Hill in these huge houses. And so there's wonderful woman Angela, who was a filmmaker who had done a film on parachute kids, and everyone started asking us questions. And then Angela and I were like, we may have had different amounts and bank accounts, but the things we didn't have were the same. We were the parents. We were the ones trying to figure out how to make it on our own. And really, we just wanted someone to let us be a kid. So we realized neither of us had, I would say my childhood probably ended in 6th grade. The first time when we lived in that one house, and then we got evicted, and I started figuring out when the gas bill comes in a yellow envelope, that means you only have so many weeks before it gets turned off. I would be able to tell by what was in the refrigerator how much money we had or didn't have. And so my job, I started a babysitting business. So I shared all of that with Carla and Angela, and it's still to this day the most vulnerable I've ever been. I answered questions that I don't know, to your point of it being personal. I'm sure you all are wonderful people, but I don't know if you asked me some of the questions that they asked me, if I would answer them. But I knew there was a purpose for it that was very specific, and I trusted Carla. So then the play got picked up by the O'Neill Theater to be developed, which is a really prestigious opportunity. And then she has continued to be so lovely, which she could have never talked to me again. Honestly, she asked if I would offer my story. I offered it, and it would have been completely fine if she said, "It's been nice speaking to you. Have a good life." Instead, she allowed for me to read the play before it was finalized. She's been incredibly, and I think that that's why the play, like Alex's character, I think is so carefully crafted. And the strength and the hope and the resiliency is so intentional. And it's true with all the characters, that I think her intentionality, it has just created something so important and beautiful. So then got picked up last year, and I went to Pittsburgh to see it. I'd never seen it on stage. This is only the second time I've ever seen it. I brought my husband, super weird. The scene between Alex and Oscar where they're breaking up, and she has to move on and goodbye, and he's like, "You're my home." I lived that scene, and there's a lot of pieces of that to see something, and like when she says, "I'm just so tired." you know, and she's talking about give a penny, take a penny. Like, that's very surreal. But it's such an important play, and the cast have been so ridiculously talented that the story is just being told so compellingly.
Yeah. So I want to give time for y'all to ask questions to open this up and make it more of a dialogue. So let's do that now, I think. I think there are so many things that we have to learn from you, but maybe we'll open the circle a little.
I have a question. By the way, I think that your story is incredible. Thanks for sharing that. I want to know, how has this shaped you as a parent? How are you with your children?
That was actually something that I really had to struggle with, especially when the art piece came out. My son, who is 9 now, has seen it, but doesn't really get what it is, right? My daughter, who's 13, she's a freshman in high school, she gets it, and it's been, like, she knows about this play, and it's something that is hard for her to process. And I loved my parent, like, she knew Nana and Pop Pop and was loved by them so deeply that I always walk this line between how do I protect how my kids knew my parents while still letting them not feel like strangers know more about me than they do. So we talk a lot about how important family is and how stuff is just stuff. I mean, my mom and I could pack, we had packed a 4-bedroom house with hefty bags in 3 hours. Hefty bags were like our friends. Her carrying around that hefty bag. Everything fits in a hefty bag, right? You put clothes in between the dishes. It's in a hefty bag. It stretches out. So I protect them from some things. As they get older, I think it'll be different. Like, I wouldn't take my daughter now to see this play, but if it's in Orange County, I wouldn't want her to feel like other people have seen it and she hasn't. So we talk a lot about how things that we go through shape what's ultimately important to us. And about how, as a family, my family always shows up, right? My brothers and I, we are tight. So we ended up taking care of our parents financially. Like, that's just kind of, it was easier, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was really hard when I was waitressing, trying to come, but once I was a lawyer, and then my brother, then it's easy. Divide the rent by 4, and we didn't have to stress out that we were going to get a phone call that the marshal was there. Do we have money? It was like we could plan it out. But that is something I still work through, to be honest with you. And it's also, you know, we live in Eastside Costa Mesa, which is a like middle class, upper middle class area, and there are kids that go to her school that, you know, they have, like, no joke, like a Lamborghini that they're driving, and my kid takes the bus. And so she might get, like, there's gonna be stuff I'm not gonna give her because of the importance. It is important, and it's important to not decide someone's worth by if they're taking and I want her to know the awesome kids on the bus.
Yeah.
So if she's always driving, then she's going to miss out on so many great people that she will never have the privilege of knowing.
It's not about the stuff.
It isn't about the stuff. Stuff goes away. You put it in a storage unit and you can't pay your fee for the storage unit and you don't have it.
When we leave here, stuff is still gonna be here.
That's exactly, you can't take it with you. That's exactly right.
What kind of advice do you give to kids, motel kids that you meet today?
One of the things that I talk to especially our teenagers about is that right now is not going to be your time to play. Just the reality of the situation is that you're going to feel tired and you're not going to have time to play, but the time will come. One of my favorite things to do is there's this one hotel, and I barter my brothers. I give them free legal advice and draft contracts for them, and then they give me gift certificates to go to this one hotel because it has a water slide. I'm almost 50. I love nothing more than going down that water slide. So it comes, and I think being able to let kids know it's not always going to be like this. Like, there will be a day where you go to bed in your bed and you're not worried about where you're going to sleep the next day.
Do you feel like it made you stronger, that experience?
Yes, I do. I mean, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be able to advocate for our kids with the same zeal and determination. You know, I've been through a lot of hard stuff. My dad died of a brain aneurysm 6 years ago, and then my mom died of ALS 2 years ago. So, but I know that even as much as I would have these, so the tired thing, I always worried that if I actually slowed down enough to feel my feelings, I'd never be able to get off the ground. I would be lying if I said that that's completely dissipated. That's always it will always be with me. But I've learned to stop and at least be present in it long enough to realize I'm stronger than I'm not going to crumble to the ground. But just knowing that you will have your day to go down the water slide or whatever that looks like to you, I think is important because you mourn that, you know, but it doesn't mean it's gone forever. It just looks different. I get to play with my kids. We have dance parties in the living room all the time.
Yeah.
You know? So that's, and I see it connecting and resonating with them because unless you've been through something where you felt so tired and you're young, why should you be feeling so tired when you're 12 years old? You're supposed to be laying in someone else's lap while they stroke your hair. You're not supposed to be worrying about getting a babysitting gig so that you have something to eat and your family. Like my sense of responsibility for my brothers, it like very deep, and it's the same them for me. I'm just the oldest. And when I went to live with my best friend, so when I was in high school, we were in a motel, and my parents felt terrible about it. Because I'm a high school girl with 3 boys living in 214 square feet. So they thought the best thing they could do for me was to send me to live with my best friend. And genuinely, they believed that to be true. I felt so guilty. I felt horrible because I knew here I'm in this big house, and my brothers are back at the motel, and I wanted to be in it with them, fighting with them. I didn't want to be separated from them. As a parent, you do the best you can with what you have. But yeah, I think just knowing that there will be a time for rest and that it's not always going to look like this. You just have to be focused enough on building a solution for yourself. Yeah.
Let's take one more question.
This play is a very open-ended play. We don't really know what's going to happen to the
Right.
kids. We know that they have essentially, despite whatever affection they have, they've divorced themselves right now from their parents. And they're young, and they have some talent, they have a dream, they have one another, but it's a big, cruel world out there. I don't really know what it is I'm asking except to say, what do you think would happen to these kids?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There was one readback before the play went into production, and Carla invited me to it, and the actors just read through. And there was one woman at the end, and nobody knew I was in the audience. One woman raised her hand and she said, "It's completely unbelievable that Alex is going to be an architect, and that these kids are going to make it."
I'm not saying it's
No. But I
saying
mean,
it's open-ended.
no. And I think that I think though that I think that someone saying that allows for a conversation. I think it being open-ended allows for us to think, why would we think that it's not possible? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if they knew, oh, Alex goes and she's an architect, we never even get to thinking about our preconceived notions about poverty about youth, about resiliency. I think we just, all that work gets done for us. And if you think about the play, so yeah, you know, the kids are on their own, but they've been on their own the whole time anyway. There's a potential liberty and freedom in knowing and just owning the fact that you're on your own. Because when you're a kid, you really want to believe that you're not, right? So if you just claim it and you own it and you go forward in it, I feel the shot's actually, you have a better shot. And I don't see Alex's character disowning her family. Like, I see it as more making a stand for, I have to have boundaries, and this is, I can't help anyone else unless I, you know, like I was so much more helpful because I had a good paying job. I mean, that's just, you know, that's just the reality of the situation. But it was interesting because I thought about that and I was like, and when the one woman made that comment and I'm sitting there and I'm like, excuse me, like, it actually works out, like, you know, just fine. And it's not a literal, like the play is not literal. The emotional experience is just spot on, right? But I think that it being open-ended allows for us to really, if we want to, think about our preconceived notions about poverty and youth. And I think that's really important because there's no such thing as youth past the point of no return or a wasted youth, or there's no such thing as that.
Or as a wasted human.
Well, no, absolutely, no,
You know, it's like
100%.
It gives us that ability to step back and say, gosh, what assumptions am I making about everyone we need?
Even just like it's been interesting, there's a gentleman named Steve Pemberton. So, and I had the absolute honor of introducing him, and his story is incredible. And he challenged me to rethink. I was new, like into the nonprofit space, and so all the vernacular was brand new. So I really was just listening to what other people were saying and then thinking that was the language. And I heard him say to someone else, how can a kid be at risk? That kid is an opportunity. So they are an opportunity, especially you look at those two kids. If I'm going to put money, right? If I'm going to put money on two kids, and I'm going to be really honest, I'm putting money on those kids rather than the kid with the Lamborghini, as far as like, do you know what I mean? But as a society, though, oftentimes we completely miss the fact that these kids are born entrepreneurs. They have, you know, we read Angela Duckworth's Grit and we try to figure out, I do, and it's super weird, but my kids are raised in a dramatically different environment than I was. How do you instill grit? Our kids have it. They have it from head to toe. All they need is opportunity.
You know, so many of us come from immigrant backgrounds. If it wasn't one generation, it was another generation. So many of them came independently as kids at
That's
14, 15, and some of them became multimillionaires.
That's right.
They became famous actors.
That's right.
Irving Berlin became a songwriter. You know, it's just,
That's right, though.
they had to, and they did.
That's right. And if you look at demographically, if we don't invest, like, so that's 1.3 million kids that we know about, which means it's at least 2.6, if not more. The opportunity to harness all of that drive, it's self-motivation. No one's getting their A's because they get $50. That's not why he got his A. He didn't get it because his dad was giving him $50. You know, Alex didn't keep the architect dream because her mom was telling her she should be an architect. Yeah.
I just saw this being a children's book, the story, and children that are living this life could read this book,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
little glimmer of hope that they could get. And I just saw it as a children's book. You know, I live in a motel.
Well, please do pick up a paper about Project Hope Alliance in the lobby. On the little table as you go out, there's information. There's information about motel kids, about parachute kids, as well as about Jennifer's organization, Project Hope Alliance. So,
And there's also
We'll
a
learn
film.
more.
So there's a
Yes.
short 10-minute film called The Invisible Girl. That is my story from a child. It's like a child. It's a beautiful film, but it's also something that's really great to share with maybe if you have friends that weren't able to see the play and you want them to kind of see the perspective. That's a great film. So if you go to projecthopealliance.org or you just Google Project Hope Invisible Girl, it will come up. And it's really appropriate for kids. Super appropriate to show to kids. Yeah. So
we are incredibly grateful for your time, for your story, for using your story to make our world better. So thank you for that. Thank you all for staying and being part of the dialogue and the conversation. Thank you. Tell your friends about the play.
yes.